What's good, YouTube? And welcome to those discussion videos, I promise. Now, I'm straight out of the gym, so don't mind the appearance for this professional talk. And we're gonna discuss a huge pricing problem in Yu-Gi-Oh! That you might have forgotten about. And it definitely does concern SP Little Knight and the direction that it is headed. So, when it comes down to this card, I'm getting some finger pointing today that I'm the reason that it's up in price. Ignore the YCS and where it was in every feature match, or Jesse Cotton detailing this is the card to look out for, and all the pre-hype going in that was correctly pointed out, as well as me discussing, yes, this is a card that is hype, but also vendors this week are going to be listing quantities, so I thought you probably would want to wait. Apparently, when I put a card on the screen, it's hype, shiny, meta craziness, and I don't think that's necessarily what happens, and I'm down to own when I'm the reason when a card goes up, just as I point out when other Yu-Gi tubers are the reason a card goes up, or a player highlight is why a card goes up. In fact, directly, I talked about Super Star Slayer Typhon early on, saying I thought this card would be more expensive. I think it's going to be played, and a lot of people have argued its placement in the metagame, but directly after I did this tweet, and it did blow up, it went up towards $15, then $18, then through the YCS weekend actually bubbled all the way up from YCS play and stuff like that to $27, $29, and has then cooled back down to around $22, $23, and stuck that landing for now. That directly beginning of the hype is me. When you have tens of thousands of eyes on your content and on your videos, you are going to have a direct impact on a market. I'm never going to argue against that you can have that pull and that it will happen, and I own when it happens. SP Little Knight, that one's not going to be on me. That's going to be on modern case ratios and having 10 secret rares so that less than an average of a playset of these is pulled out of a booster case, in combination with cards like this, and ultra rare slots have gone crazy. Borreload Savage Dragon, when it didn't get a reprint for a long time, hit $80+. IP Masquerena short printed $60 some odd plus, and this is in the secret rare slot where it's extremely hard to pull, and then the quarter century rare is going to be what, something in like 1/7-8 cases, something like that. That's like 75 booster boxes minimum if we're getting 4 per case on average, but if it's 3 per case average, it's 8.33. Look, I know I'm the number guy, but I like to back things with numbers when I'm talking, which is also why I want to segue before we get into the rest of the discussion of whose fault is it and that kind of stuff, and where I see the future of this card, and talk about something that happened with numbers a while ago that you might have forgot about, and that's pre-crush card times. Back in 2020, Lightning Storm, a 3 of in the main deck, started to bubble up towards $140 to $165, but that was more of a tech option. You didn't have to play it, although a majority of the field was starting to choose to play it. I think it was like in 22 out of 32 topping decks. It's still a choice, whereas SP Little Knight is in quite a few deck lists as well as a 1 to 2 of. You're looking at this card being pretty much every freaking where, every match, and really showing itself off. So with this card that being accessible from the extra deck instead of having to wait to draw it from the main deck, extra deck monsters that are even 1-ups have a history in the game of going way up. But the change that I'm talking about that happened is the cap for the price on cards at YCS's went away, and with that in tandem of Lightning Storm, that's where it really started to break history's prices of more modern secret rares and where they had been. You see, when vendors are at an event, they are usually, in the past, capped to $100 sales, but that didn't make sense with modern Starlights. That had to go away, right? Like, it wouldn't make sense that they have all these cards floating out and vendors can't deal with them at event. So the cap on cards went away, rightfully so, but even versus estimated value pulled, it used to kind of bring cards back down to be around 120 so that people could sell them on the floor, because if you're selling them for 120 online, after fees on a platform and shipping, you're making pretty darn close to 100, so might as well sell it for that at the event and start to also keep them to maybe just trade with that sort of thing if able to hold on to them, but usually they're just selling them out at the event. With that cap gone, there's not that incentive incentive to keep that card price down and intertwine them back into the community events, and cards end up skyrocketing in price like crazy, and Lightning Storm was one of the first modern to do that. And then again, in the Crush Card times, metagame, remote duels, things weren't as hyped for gameplay, and then we didn't get into as crazy of generics along with that hype for a while, but we have started to see triple tactic thrust also start to bubble up, which ends up being played in the format. So I think this card, along with that, have a future of, if they don't get reprinted in a while and their reprints end up super short print like Konami tends to do at times with star-studded reprints, we could see some crazy price speculations on these cards. Again, in the immediate, I think a lot of vendors have not listed their stock yet, so I expect the supply of this card to end up going relatively up versus where it's at now, but I also expect that there's going to be some bigger sales than usual, like Black Friday bonus books back, where people start to target this and go for that extra amount. Oh, I have this money left over that I expected to end up throwing at this sale and I actually underspent. Let me go ahead. I'm going to need this card for the metagame in the future. Unlike the usual winter market where things super cool off, this fall has been heating up like never before with buyout, buyout, buyout. And I think once we see kind of that ban list going into a competitive season, I think a lot of people will also be grabbing their meta staples like usual. And assuming this is one of the safe ones, I do think that that cap is going to go. So am I hyping this card now? No, I think there's going to be better places to buy it, but there are going to be a lot of different calls on where people are going to buy it. And also with the quarter century rares not selling at this price, but it is impressive to note that it sold out at the $400 mark and people aren't going to automatically want to list back at that. I personally thought it would bubble up towards $450 to $475 before disappearing. So again, I missed the mark on where it was going to go. Now, on the conversation of, well, it's my fault, this one's a joke, right? But when we go through the conversation here on Twitter, I'm getting a little finger pointing. You caused all of this. Yeah, me, I did this. And I actually did reply to another comment, which turns out to be a joke. Well, you currently didn't help. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Do I have Chase Morgan powers over the market and that sort of stuff? Absolutely not. Am I going to list a ton and flood the market? I don't have those abilities to change ratios like Konami does, but I do have a platform that can end up hyping things at times, but I don't think that's the case because the lightning in the bottle for this card was the YCS event and people seeing it in actual gameplay and having previously maybe underestimated writing it off as hype, but it actually ending up performing. So that's where I think this price spike initially comes from, and for the future of the card versus my predictions, I do think that without a reprint on the horizon that you could get it going up a lot. Now, Konami could have one other curveball for this. Remember Power of the Elements getting an unlimited wave? I remember that. A lot of people don't like to bring that one up because Power of the Elements still doesn't have its reprints out there, and we're wondering when those will be. So with Age of Overlord, I could see a similar situation where Konami does throw a curveball. There's no definites when it comes to cards. That's why I'm not a financial advisor. I don't know the future of what Konami's going to do, your personal bankroll, what you can hold on to, where card prices are going to go. They can go a lot of different directions than I thought, exactly like how the quarter century rare has already overperformed in my estimates. But when it comes down to these discussions, I do think there is a balance between creators holding themselves responsible, like I did with Super Star Slayer, and saying, yeah, that's my fault, versus, oh yeah, every single time, thanks John Moore, thanks Market Tuber, oh, it's Cali Effect's fault, it's this fault, versus, like, if it's on the screen and it's talked about, it just doesn't go up knee-jerk reaction. Like this went up when I put it on screen and said, I don't think this is great, I think it's overhyped, I think it's rogue, it does perform in the rogue category, and it shoots up in price anyways. And to that point, actually, the quarter century rare has mostly gone down, although there's very few left at its market price. But the fact that there is that little hype into the quarter century rare for it not to have been fully bought out to this point, but it might be about to, I still feel like that's kind of proof in the pudding, so to say, that this isn't overperforming, that it's performing about where I thought it would be, yet still the prices can go the other direction. There's also a ton of estimated value pulled in Age of Overlord, although there's way worse boxes than, say, Rise of the Duels. It feels a lot more balanced like Darkwing Blast, where not every box is going to give it back to you for the most part. There's not just Adamancipator Friends as the bomb, but there are a ton of really good prices and cards to spread, which is why this booster box is maintained at 70 and above, which is a success for a modern booster box by far. And usually when this happens, we start to see it go up from there on the sealed. And that's not to say go buy it now and keep it sealed. Like a jump from 70 to 77, if you were to list it on a platform, you would lose money versus that and shipping, right? You would actually need it to jump past, I think, 85, 86 to start making money online. So you need a relatively big jump, and that may happen for the set depending, but the archetype inside is performing, the top generic cards are performing, and then you have archetype DLCs, which is basically all that Duelist Nexus got to do was be DLC. So it does successful DLCs for decks, a successful new deck, another decent new engine, and then generics. There's a lot of estimated value pulled there, and it will be interesting to see if the card prices hold or the sealed ends up going up as they go up as well. But I think the latter is probably going to happen, especially through the competitive season. Thank you for watching today's discussion in my most professional attire. Hey, I'm getting a little more flat-chested and evening out there, but I promise to try to bring better equipment. I'll work out with sleeve shirts from now on in case these discussions pop up. But this one, not my fault. You can blame me for the mech going up instead, though. Thanks for watching, everybody. And again, the main discussion was, hey, that price cap is gone at events and cards can go crazier, and that is something to watch out for versus us being used to $120 cards. It's not just inflation and box prices went up, it's also the player cap being gone on being able to get cards for $100 or less at events being gone for a long time now.